Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar news update video. This time out we have some pretty interesting news. Probably not as big as you maybe think it is from the title, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. So just to, set your expectations in the right way for kind of what this quote-unquote news is. It really is just a minor hint. This is not something that's going to, I think, immediately quite put the rumors straight into play that, there's a new Avatar series in production, but it's like, yeah, this definitely makes it more likely that a third Avatar series will happen. But let's get into it. So this is Nick Alive reporting on this, and of course, if you've been around in the fandom for a while, you'll know that Nick Alive do report accurate information. They're good. I've referenced them before for kind of news articles and stuff like that, and so on. So yeah, no problem here, because they're just reporting on the ViacomCBS Q3 2020 earnings results, and that includes the earnings call, where the CEO of Viacom talks about sort of business strategy. And the Avatar section is in the spotlight on streaming, and that is with the idea that Viacom's streaming service is going to have a name change and relaunch in 2021 to Paramount Plus. And obviously the Avatar section comes up when they're talking about new original series that they will have on Paramount Plus to, I suppose, draw people in. So let's go back to the Avatar article specifically. So the first section of this is kind of just, intro on Avatar, the situation, it won't have Mike and Brian on board and stuff like that. Important context for this news in terms of like, yeah, it sort of feels like things are maybe coming together. People in the right position, thinking the right way about the franchise for maybe a third Avatar series is happening. But yeah. So the basic tease is that, he hinted that we might see another Avatar project, which is basically a way to interpret what he says. Another part of the setup here would be that they've already announced a SpongeBob SquarePants spin-off called Camp Coral, SpongeBob's Underyears. So that's kind of interesting. A long-running Nickelodeon show getting its first spin-off show in a while. That's kind of interesting that they haven't done that already, but they are for Paramount Plus. That's kind of interesting. They also are doing they offer a scripted limited series about the making of The Godfather, a new edition of MTV's Behind the Music, The Real Criminal Minds, based off the show Criminal Minds, The SpongeBob Show, and others. So they're already doing other original stuff, which is what streaming services are doing now. It's not enough to just put your already made shows on your streaming platform and that's it. You have to have original content also. And so this is where we get into the quote here, where the news comes from, which is, okay, this is the stuff that we're already working on, but we also have these other franchises, because we have quite a lot of franchises, and here's some that we think would really work well. So in terms of Paramount Plus, we've announced some entertainment franchises that we're bringing to Plus. The Godfather, SpongeBob, The Criminal Minds spin-out, said Backish. But under the covers, our preview launch showed that there are other franchises that work too that have potential. Things like MTV's reality show The Challenge. Things like Nick's animated library series Avatar. And all this is really just the tip of the iceberg. And we do have other franchises in the company, so you can safely assume that upcoming announcements will include new original variants of them for Paramount Plus. So that's sort of like, the end result. He's bringing up all these franchises that the company has and basically saying that in the future we're going to be announcing new shows based on other franchises that may or may not include The Challenge, Avatar, and other franchises that the company has. We'll of course have some non-franchise based new originals to keep things fresh, but I'm not going to get ahead of things and reveal them until we get much closer to launch. So I suppose the question here is is Avatar just brought up in this statement as oh, people like Avatar, we might do Avatar, or is it kind of or we're not ready to announce anything yet, but we know from our marketing and stuff like that data that Avatar is very popular, this reality show is very popular, so yeah, like look out for announcements about stuff related to them. Like, does this line here directly relate to like what he's just announced here? It's that's where it's hard to tell. At the very least, that's why, you know, I think it's fair enough to call it like a hint or a tease of a new Avatar series. The way you have to interpret this is that obviously this is the CEO. He is noting from like marketing data what series that the company has that are going to draw people to this relatively new streaming service. And how can they possibly ignore how successful Avatar and Korra were when they came to Netflix? Avatar especially really kind of like broke some records, kind of coming back and being so popular. And then Korra did really, really well also, highlighting that franchise in general really works. And that for sure they sort of know, with the continued popularity of it since then, since it came to Netflix all those months ago, there's still that popularity there. And so I suppose from his point of view, if they're trying to create content, why wouldn't they make content for Paramount Plus based on Avatar? That would be a huge missed opportunity not to do that when you theoretically could. And this is where we get into, like I said at the start, maybe the stars beginning to align on, you know, actually thinking a new series could happen. Because the problem up to now has always been that we as fans have always viewed that Nickelodeon and Viacom have always not felt particularly strongly about Avatar and Korra. They know it's kind of successful and they value the brand, but they don't really do anything with it. And then the other thing would be that, oh, Mike and Brian are basically on this like break from working on animation, and who knows how long it'll take them to come back. And most people had pretty much put it down as like, yeah, we're probably never getting into their Avatar series, just because, you know, the sort of like the treatment that Korra got, you know, towards the end of its run and so on. Is this ever going to actually come together again? But a few things have happened, of course. Mike and Brian have left the Netflix show, so all of a sudden they're freed up to work on a project, and they left the Netflix show without, I suppose, really making anything as such, and they're distancing themselves from that project completely. So they're sort of in the creative mood, and all of a sudden Viacom, Nickelodeon, like they who own the franchise, are suddenly like, yeah, an Avatar show could really be something that could add value to our streaming platform. Hey, Mike and Brian, you know, want to make another series? And now that they've seen the popularity, there might be a sense of, yeah, we'll let you do what you want. You've made 2 popular shows before, go ahead. And we could see them get the full creative control that they want. And then the other thing is that the landscape that we're in now in 2020/2021, very quickly, is we don't have to worry about a lot of the way Korra was treated on Nickelodeon, because this would be going up on a streaming platform. And once they give them time to do the animation and stuff like that, they're going to make their decision to either release the full season at once, or do sort of like, say, The Mandalorian is doing at the moment, and release the episodes kind of weekly. Either way is cool, but, you know, digital releases of shows is perfectly fine now. No problem. And so this immediately, it feels like, solves the problem of sort of like the availability of the show. The problem with Avatar and Korra on Nickelodeon has always been that you have to air it in order. And Nickelodeon tends to not particularly like that, because it locks them into schedules for like long runs of time, and they're not really great at that. Now all of a sudden that doesn't matter on a streaming platform, because you can just go search for the show and watch it. It's always available, and so on. So a lot of stuff feels like it's sort of coming together here. The last big step ultimately is, yes, Mike and Brian are not working on the Netflix show anymore, and yes, when they left the show, they said that they are continuing to work on Avatar. I think at the time we all were like, oh, well, surely that just means they're now going to work more heavily on the comics and books and stuff like that. But now it could be like, maybe this is the time for the 3rd series. And I think that's why the rumor mill, I think, is going to fire up on this third series now. Even if it's not confirmed for quite a while, this definitely puts it in the ballpark of actually happening. And I think this will be the thing that really switches a lot of people over to being like, third series, nah, never, to wait. The head guy at Viacom is like mentioning Avatar as one of the like first 2 unannounced things that he might want to do. That's pretty positive. And the creators are freed up. Why not? Obviously, the connection of like them actually going back onto an animation is kind of a big thing, and a lot would probably depend on how much creative control they actually get. If they could get the episode count, the number of seasons that they want, that's fine. And then because it is on streaming platform, a lot of the kind of network related stuff is not going to be, I suppose, as much of a problem, hopefully. But I don't really want to go into too much speculation on a third series, but just because I assume people will probably ask if I don't mention it. As for where it should be set, in my mind, the high-ups at Nickelodeon, as well as the fans, would probably want it to be set like in the timeline that we already have. Like, don't go to the next Avatar after Korra. Just because a lot of people tend to prefer the more traditional stuff that we see from Avatar, and so if you go backwards to cover the huge gap that we have, cover one of those avatars, whether it be one of your first avatars just after 1, or an avatar more in the middle, which is still like thousands of years before like Kyoshi, Kuruk, and Yang Chen. That's an interesting time period where you're going into even less technology. The world may not be exactly the way we know it, and you could create some really interesting dynamics. Whereas you're maybe taking a few too many risks if you go like 70, 80 years after Korra to the next Avatar, because technology is going to have to advance. And are we okay with going even further into technology in Avatar when already Korra, for a lot of people, felt like it was a little bit too much of a step? It'll all depend on, again, if Mike and Brian take on board this project, creatively what they want to do. Because I really think probably the one thing that they may not really want to do is more like Aang stuff. Basically your book 4 style content, like adapt the comics. That to me seems like something that, yes, from a business point of view and from a fan point of view, yes. But creatively for Mike and Brian, I don't really see that being something that appeals to them. So if they come back on, I think it's something that creatively they really, really want to do. Now maybe that's changed, because again, they were all set on working as hard as they could on a live action Netflix show, which was just an adaptation of ATLA. So how can they say that like it's uncreative to explore the gaps in Aang's timeline when they were planning to do a direct like remake of the show just in live action? That doesn't quite like fit to me, I guess. Now obviously that was them wanting to maybe break into live action, but you know, still, like, that's the situation that we have. Again, I don't want to go into too much speculation about a third series just because this isn't full confirmation, but like I said, it feels like a step in the right direction, that you have your 2 big, you know, ticks on the checklist of things that need to happen to get the rumor mill going. The high-ups in relation to the Avatar franchise, Viacom, view Avatar as being something that could bring value to Paramount Plus. Big check. Mike and Brian are no longer working on the Netflix show. Big check. The last thing that really needs to happen is, I suppose, communication between those 2 parties. Do they contact Mike and Brian to organize a third series, and how does that happen? That would be the last big thing. And ultimately that would be that news article coming out, rumor Mike and Brian on board for a third Avatar series. It feels like that is something that you could actually see happen at some point in 2021. Now, that maybe wasn't at all possible a few years ago, but now, yes, like, kind of, why not? That's what it feels like. Mike O'Brien didn't succeed at what they wanted to do in the Netflix show, they might creatively want to make something good to prove that they left that show for the right reasons and that they can make something good. That might be something that really gets them going to want to do a series here. But yeah, in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on this. How much of a sort of, you know, hint at a third Avatar series do you think this is? Is it just a tease that, like, because Avatar is popular on Netflix, he mentions it, or is there something more to it? Definitely let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are on this kind of big piece of news. But that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.